Hey there, it's Liz from No Trace. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these adorable little mini tote bags. These bags sew up super duper fast, and they're also a really fun way to put some of your small pieces of fabric to good use. And I bet you have a little one in your life who would love one of these. To make our mini tote, we're going to use 2 pieces of fabric for the outer layer that are 7 inches tall and 5.5 inches wide. And then we want 2 pieces for the inner layer. They're the same measurements, 7 inches tall, 5.5 inches wide. And then for the straps, we're going to use 2 pieces of fabric that are 2 inches wide and 10 inches tall, or you could do a 1 piece that's 20 inches tall and just cut it in half, whatever is easier for you. I'm going to be using a bias tape maker to make my little bitty straps, but you definitely don't need one of these. But this is a 25mm bias tape maker, and it works with 2 inches of fabric. I'm also going to use a little 3-inch scrap piece of fabric as a little decorative loop to put on the side. You could use a ribbon, or you could just not include a little loop if you don't want to. So this is totally optional. The first step is to make the straps. And again, like I said, you could use a bias tape maker, but you definitely don't need one. So if you have a bias tape maker, what we're gonna do is get the 2-inch strip with the wrong side facing up into the bias tape maker, and you might need a little seam ripper to help push it through. And once you have a little bit of fabric sticking out the end, you can just sort of gently tug on that, and then make sure that your fabric is laying nicely folded like that. Then we'll go ahead and grab our iron and just gently pull on the bias tape maker while we iron the fabric to get a nice crease on the edge there, on both edges, all the way down. And then we're going to fold it in half lengthwise and press it one more time to make our skinny strap. Just like that. Now you might want to clip that in place so that you don't lose your nice pressing when you take it over to the sewing machine. If you don't have a bias tape maker, all you need to do is fold your 2-inch piece of fabric in half and go ahead and press it with the iron. And then we'll open it up and press those raw edges, or fold those raw edges towards the center crease, and then iron it again. So this way definitely works too. It's just a little bit more fussy than the bias tape maker, and maybe a little bit less precise, but that is okay because this does not have to be absolutely perfect. Okay, then we fold it one more time and press it. So you should be ending up with a strap that's about a 1/2 inch wide after all this folding and pressing. And then again, you might want to put a couple clips on here. I always like to just use metal binder clips because I try to avoid buying plastic. And now we are ready to take these both to the machine and sew them. I'm gonna go ahead and take off one of these clips, and I'm gonna get this under my presser foot. I'm gonna be stitching right along this edge, the open edge first. I'm gonna start about a 1/2 inch away from that, or maybe a 1/4 inch away from the end, because this skinny strap will want to get stuck down in your machine. So you might need to start your stitches a little away from the edge, go forward a little bit, and then reverse. You could also use a little piece of fabric at the back if you find that your strap is getting stuck down in there. So just use a little scrap, a little leader piece, I think it's sometimes called. And then just go all the way down with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that I've gotten near the end, I'm going to actually grab my second strap and get ready to just sew right onto this strap. And this helps avoid the fabric from getting kind of sucked down into your machine. keep going straight down with another 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on your second strap. Okay, so I've got one side of both of my straps done. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the other side. This is just a decorative stitch, but I think it looks a little better if you have stitching on both sides of your little strap. And just same process, go all the way down. And again, I'm getting near the end of the first strap, and I'm just going to keep stitching right onto my second strap. Okay, so the two straps are both top stitched and they're sewn together. All you have to do is just snip right there. I can show you this. Just go snip, snip, and you've got your two straps ready to use. Again, you could do this with one continuous piece of fabric that's 20 inches long, but I just happen to have smaller scraps of fabric, so I did it in 2 pieces. Once the straps are done, we're going to set those aside, and next we're going to be stitching up our 2 pieces of outer fabric. So you want to get your outer fabric with the right sides together, and if you decide to use a little decorative loop or strap, you're going to decide where you want that to be and just place it in between the layers with the loop pointing in to the inside, and then you can just clip or pin that in place. I'm going to just put a little clip right there. I'm also going to add a little no trace tag to the opposite side because I like to put a tag there. And again, the loopy part of the tag is pointed towards the inside of the bag, and you want to give at least 1 inch for your seam allowances at the top and the bottom. So I'm actually going to put this a couple inches away from the top and then go ahead and clip that in place. Now the inner layers of fabric are just going to get sewn up with the right sides together without any little embellishments. All right, over at the machine, I'm going to be stitching the 2 outer layers together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to be sewing the sides and the bottom edge of these layers, making sure to leave the top edge open. And I want to make sure to back stitch at the start and the stop. And now I'm going to repeat that with the 2 inside pieces of fabric. So again, I'm just sewing 3 sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. So my little bag should look like this. Okay, so my 2 layers are sewn, and now in the next step, we're going to be assembling the outer, inner, and the straps. I'm going to turn the outer layers right side out and push those corners out. You might want a chopstick for this, but you can also do this in a following step, so you don't have to have the corners perfect for this step. Okay, so this is right side out, and I'm going to put it inside the inner layers, which are still wrong side out. So I'm sliding them so that the right side of my outer layer is touching the right side of my inner layer. It's kind of hard to tell with this fabric, but the right sides are together, and just get it all the way down into the corners. Next, I'm going to take a moment and make sure that these side seams, you see that, are lining up nicely with each other. And I'm going to actually open up the seams so that they lay flat. Okay, so I've got these seams, they're lined up, they're opened up on the side, so they lay a little more flat. And then I'm going to just put a pin right there to hold the side seams together, and then just come over to the other side and do that same thing. So line up those seams. Oh, I had my little Alabama accent came out for a second there. Okay, line up the seams, make sure the fabric is laying flat. I mean, it's not super critical that the seam fabric is laying flat, but just line those up and get a pin right there. Once these 2 are pinned together and lined up at the sides, we're going to take one strap and we're going to fold it. We don't want to twist it, we just want a nice simple fold, and we're going to place it in between the layers of fabric with the fold, the loopy part of the strap pointed down towards the bottom. And then we want to pin it on the sides. But what we want to do is measure 1 inch away from this side seam. So if you have a ruler or a cutting mat, just place the seam on a line and just count over 1 inch, and then center the strap right at the 1 inch mark, and then just go ahead and make sure it's nice and straight. And we want about 1/4 inch of strap poking out, and then we are going to put a pin right there to hold it in place. So we'll do the same with the other side of this strap. We want it to be 1 inch away from this side seam. So again, I'm going to put this side seam on a line on my mat, and then I'm going to put the strap 1 inch away, centered 1 inch away from that spot, and my strap is sticking out about 1/4 of an inch from the bag. That way I know I'm going to catch it in my next seam, because if it's much lower than that, sometimes you can kind of lose track of where your strap is. Okay, so your strap should look like that. And then we'll just repeat that with the second strap on the other side. So just fold it, get that loop pointed down, and then just line it up. All right, so you can see that the straps are all pinned in place. And now we're going to sew all along this raw edge using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to start just before one of the straps. And the way we're going to sew this is we're going to be sewing along this inside edge of the bag, because it's so tiny we can't really slide it over our sewing machine. So we're going to sew inside that little opening, and we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to start with a little back stitch. And then I'm going to be sewing over the strap. There's a little more close-up view. So I'm going to sew over the strap, and then I'm going to back stitch, and then sew over the strap one more time. And that way the straps are nice and secure. Even though this is a teeny tiny tote bag and it's not going to be holding really heavy stuff, it's good to make sure that the straps are secure. Okay, and I just want to open up my side seam here. And accidentally got my needle up, but that's okay. Just keep going. And when you come to another strap, I'm going to take the pin out. I'm going to go over the strap and reinforce with a couple extra layers. Ooh, watch out. It's a little bit fussy because you're working with a small opening, but it also sews up really fast. Okay, one more strap on this side. And reverse. Okay, and then we come forward a little more. Okay, and we're going to go over this strap and reinforce it, and then we're going to stop right here so that we have a nice little opening to work with. Okay, reinforce a little bit more. Okay, and then we can stop. Okay, so you can see that I've stitched all around this edge, but I left an opening here, and this is how we are going to turn our bag right side out. We're just going to go through that hole and pull the outer layer out and pull all the straps. And once the outer layer is out, we also want to turn the inner layer all the way out and then push the inner layer inside the outer layer. And this is where you might want to get your chopstick out or your pencil and really push down into these corners down here. Get them nice and crisp. Okay, we're almost done with our itty bitty mini tote. What we want to do next is press this top edge with the iron, especially where we have that opening, to make sure that it lays nice and flat and neat so that we can finish up this bag. So just, it's kind of hard to get the iron inside there, but you are welcome to try to get your iron on the inside of the bag and just press that seam, or if that's too hard, just lay your little bag flat on your ironing surface and then just press the seam on one side, flip it over, and press it on the other. And I'm just making sure that it lays flat and straight all the way around like this. All right, back at the machine, we're going to do the same sewing that we did when we first stitched around this top edge. We're going to be sewing along the inside of the bag. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot and get my bag under, and I'm going to stitch around with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. As you go around, just keep moving the bag out of the way so that you're just sewing along that one seam at a time. As we get near our starting point, I'm just going to go over those stitches. Just go over a couple of those stitches and then do a couple of back stitches and one more forward. That way the finishing point is less obvious. Let's get this off of here. So it should look like that. And now the mini tote is all done. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the No Trace channel to get notified about all of our videos. We put out a new video every single week on zero waste sewing, crafting, and lifestyle tips. Also, we have a community over on Facebook where we share and talk all about zero waste sewing and crafting and lifestyle tips. So click the link below this video. I'd love to see you over there and connect.